This secret car feature is unknown to 99% of people use it now. Your car is smarter than you think, and it has been trying to protect you, save your money, and prevent breakdowns since the day you drove it off the lot. You just never knew how to listen. After 18 years of diagnosing vehicles that should not have broken down and studying the engineering documentation that most dealerships never share with their customers, I found a pattern. Today, I am covering 10 secret car features that 99% of drivers do not know exist. Some of these will change the way you drive today. Let us get into it. Number 10. The tire pressure pre-drive equalization window. Here is something tire engineers know that almost no driver does. A tire that reads 32 psi cold reads between 34 and 37 psi after 10 minutes of driving. That is not a malfunction. That is physics. Friction and load generate heat. Heat expands the air inside the tire and pressure rises. What this means is that your tire pressure monitoring system, fitted to every car sold in the United States since 2008, is calibrated around cold inflation pressure readings. The warning threshold that triggers the dashboard alert is set relative to the cold baseline. If you top up your tires after driving even a short distance, you are adding air to a tire that is already thermally expanded, and you will be overinflating it relative to the cold specification. What comes next is a feature hiding inside a system you interact with every single day. But what most people do not realize is that using it incorrectly is one of the leading causes of a component failure that typically costs between $600 and $1,400 to repair. Number 9. The air conditioning compressor preservation mode. According to data from the Mobile Air Conditioning Society, air conditioning compressor failure is the third most common mechanical repair on vehicles between 5 and 10 years old in North America. Here is what is happening inside the compressor when you do that. The AC compressor contains refrigerant oil that lubricates the internal pistons and bearings. When the compressor is running, that oil is distributed throughout the system under pressure. The feature most drivers do not know about is the economy cycle. On Toyota, Honda, and Volkswagen vehicles, pressing the AC button twice in rapid succession, 2 presses within 1 second, activates an intermittent compressor cycle mode that runs the compressor at 60% duty cycle instead of continuous operation. My advice: try the economy cycle on your next drive. Your compressor will still be running when drivers who never knew about it are writing checks. But compressor preservation is about protecting a component you use in summer. The next feature protects a component that works hardest in winter, fails most often in spring, and costs almost nothing to save if you know what your car is already trying to tell you. Number 8. The alternator load management signal. A 2021 study by AAA found that battery and electrical system failures were the #1 cause of roadside assistance calls for the 3rd consecutive year, accounting for 26% of all callouts. Most of those failures were preventable, not by replacing parts earlier. By reading a signal the car was already broadcasting. The feature almost no driver knows about is what that idle rise is actually telling you. If your engine idle rises noticeably under normal electrical loads that would not have caused a rise previously, the alternator's load threshold has dropped. It is working harder to produce the same output it once produced at lower effort. That is the early warning signature of an alternator approaching the end of its service life. Philip, a reader in Ohio, noticed his engine idle rising on cold mornings and assumed the car needed a tune-up. He spent $240 on a service that changed nothing. 6 weeks later, the alternator failed on the motorway. A $100 voltmeter reading taken at any point in those 6 weeks would have identified the failing alternator and allowed a planned replacement at half the cost of an emergency roadside replacement. Now, forget about components for a moment. The next feature is not about protecting parts, it is about protecting you. Number 7. The load adaptive headlight leveling system. Here is a statistic that should stop you cold. According to the European Road Safety Observatory, misaligned headlights contribute to 17% of nighttime collision fatalities in multi-vehicle accidents on undivided roads. Every car sold in Europe since 2001, and most cars sold in North America since 2004, contains an automatic headlight leveling system. The system uses sensors at the front and rear suspension to measure the vehicle's pitch angle and adjust the headlight beam angle accordingly. When you load the boot with luggage, the rear of the car drops, the nose rises, and without leveling compensation, your headlights point into the sky instead of the road ahead. The system works automatically and continuously on vehicles with dynamic leveling. But on vehicles with static leveling, which includes the majority of non-premium vehicles, the system requires the driver to manually select a load setting using a small dial or control, typically located on the dashboard to the left of the steering column or within the lighting controls submenu. Adjust the load setting before every journey where your vehicle load is different from normal. It takes 4 seconds. It is the difference between seeing the road and being seen as a hazard. The feature at number 6 will change how you feel about the engine warning light permanently, because what I'm about to tell you is something dealerships prefer you do not know, and it has been sitting inside your instrument cluster the entire time. Number 6. The onboard diagnostic freeze frame function. The check engine light comes on. Most drivers do one of 3 things. They ignore it and hope it goes away. They cover the instrument cluster with a piece of tape so they cannot see it, or they go directly to a dealership and hand over between $100 and $200 for a diagnostic scan. Here is what your car has been able to do for free since 1996, when the US federal government mandated that every vehicle sold must contain an OBD2 diagnostic port. The OBD2 system does not just store a fault code when something goes wrong, it stores a freeze frame, a snapshot of every engine parameter at the exact moment the fault was detected. Engine temperature, RPM, vehicle speed, fuel trim, throttle position, and oxygen sensor readings are all captured simultaneously and held in memory until cleared. This freeze frame is accessible with a basic OBD2 reader that costs between $15 and $30 from any auto parts retailer. Plug it into the port located beneath the dashboard on the driver's side, typically within 30 centimeters of the steering column, and the reader displays both the fault code and the freeze frame data in under 60 seconds. Armed with that information, a driver can cross-reference the fault code against a free database like the one at obd-codes.com, understand what system is affected and under what conditions the fault occurred, and make an informed decision about urgency before spending anything at a shop. David, a subscriber in Seattle, spent $160 at a dealership to be told his car had a code for a loose fuel cap. The check engine light had come on 2 days after a fill-up. A $30 reader would have shown him the evaporative emissions system code immediately. He would have tightened the cap, cleared the code, and driven away without spending $1 on labor. Buy a reader. Keep it in the glove box. Every check engine light your car produces for the rest of its life costs you $30 once, not $138 every time. What is coming at number 5 is arguably the most underused safety feature on any modern vehicle. Most drivers turn it off, and the data on what happens when they do is genuinely alarming. Number 5. The Electronic Stability Control Override Threshold. Electronic Stability Control, known as ESC, is the single most effective active safety technology ever fitted to a passenger vehicle. Every car sold in the United States since 2012 is legally required to have it, and a significant percentage of drivers disable it the moment they feel it intervening in their driving. Here is what almost no one knows. ESC on every modern vehicle has 2 distinct operating modes, and the button drivers press to deactivate the system, in most cases, only partially deactivates it. A single press of the escape button on Toyota, Honda, Ford, and most other manufacturers disables traction control, the component that limits wheel spin during acceleration. This is the sport mode that performance drivers use on track days or when navigating deep snow where wheel spin is needed for momentum. A press and hold of the escape button for 5 to 7 seconds on most vehicles fully deactivates the stability control system, including the yaw correction and roll mitigation functions that prevent the car from sliding or rolling during cornering and emergency maneuvers. This full deactivation mode is what many drivers accidentally activate, believing they have only turned off traction control. A single press leaves the life-saving stability functions active while removing the acceleration limitation. A press and hold removes everything. Know which mode you are activating before you press that button. The difference between a single press and a 5-second hold is the difference between a traction adjustment and the removal of a system that has saved 10,000 lives a year. There is nothing about the next feature that involves danger or damage. This one is purely about money, and the amount of money drivers leave on the table every single year by not knowing it exists will make you want to check your settings before you finish this video. Number 4. The fuel injection trim adaptation reset. Every fuel-injected vehicle produced since the mid-1990s contains a long-term fuel trim adaptation system. The engine management unit continuously monitors the oxygen sensor signals after combustion and adjusts the fuel injection duration to maintain the optimal air-to-fuel ratio of 14.7 to 1. On a healthy, well-maintained engine, long-term fuel trim values sit between -5% and +5%. This means the ECU is making small corrections of under 5% to the base fuel map to account for normal variations in air density, fuel quality, and component aging. When an engine has accumulated carbon deposits on the intake valves, a partially clogged fuel injector, or a marginally degraded mass airflow sensor, the long-term fuel trim climbs. Values above +10% mean the ECU is adding 10% more fuel than the base map calls for because it is trying to compensate for an inefficiency somewhere in the system. You are burning 10% more fuel than a clean, properly calibrated engine would consume for the same output. The reset procedure forces the ECU to relearn fuel trim from baseline, which reveals the true state of the engine's efficiency, and in some cases, after a fresh air filter and injector cleaning, returns trim values to within the normal range without further repairs. On most vehicles, the reset is performed by disconnecting the negative battery terminal for 20 minutes, then performing the idle relearn procedure specific to your vehicle after reconnection. The full relearn typically takes 2 to 3 cold start cycles to complete. I performed this reset on a 2015 Nissan Altima belonging to a reader in Atlanta named Christine, who had noticed a gradual decline in fuel economy over 18 months from 31 miles per gallon to 26 miles per gallon with no obvious cause. A scan of her long-term fuel trim showed +14%. After an intake cleaning service and a fuel trim reset, her economy returned to 29.5 miles per gallon within 3 weeks. 4.5 miles per gallon recovered. At 15,000 miles per year, that is a saving of over $300 annually at current fuel prices. The intake cleaning cost $200. The reset cost nothing. She recovered the cleaning cost in less than 8 months of improved fuel economy. The next feature is one that manufacturers built into your car for reasons that go beyond convenience. It involves your windows, and what it can do in a specific emergency has saved lives in situations where every second between a decision and an outcome is the difference between escape and not. Number 3. The remote window ventilation and emergency exit function. Every vehicle with remote keyless entry produced since approximately 2007 contains a remote window ventilation function. On most vehicles, pressing and holding the unlock button on the key fob for 3 to 5 seconds after the initial unlock press commands all 4 windows to lower simultaneously. This is not a feature most owners ever discover because it is not in the Quick Start Guide and occupies 2 sentences in the full owner's manual if it is mentioned at all. The emergency application is less comfortable to discuss, but more important to know. In the event of a child or animal locked inside a hot vehicle and the doors inaccessible due to a central locking fault, the remote window function may allow ventilation and, depending on the window size, extraction without breaking glass. A subscriber in Phoenix named Rachel used this function when her daughter accidentally triggered the central locking from inside the vehicle while Rachel was loading the boot. The interior lock button was unresponsive to the child's pressing. Rachel used the fob hold sequence to lower the rear windows and was able to unlock the car manually through the open window within 40 seconds. On a 101-degree day in an Arizona car park, she told me those 40 seconds felt like the most important thing she had ever learned about her car. Test this function on your vehicle today, in normal conditions, before you ever need it in an emergency. Not every vehicle's fob sequence is identical. 30 seconds of testing now could be 30 critical seconds saved later. We are at the final 2. Number 2 is a feature that has been standard on virtually every vehicle for 15 years. Let's go. Number 2, the lane departure warning calibration reset. According to a 2022 study by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, vehicles equipped with lane departure warning systems show a 21% reduction in injury crashes caused by unintentional lane drift when the system is properly calibrated and active. Lane departure warning systems on every major vehicle platform require periodic recalibration when the following events occur: windscreen replacement, front camera housing adjustment, suspension modification, or significant tire size change. The camera that powers the system is mounted to the windscreen or the rearview mirror housing and is calibrated to a specific viewing angle relative to the road surface. Any change to windscreen geometry or camera position shifts the calibration. The recalibration procedure on most vehicles does not require a dealer visit. On Toyota and Lexus vehicles, the procedure is performed through the display audio system under the driver assistance settings menu and involves driving at above 30 miles per hour on a clearly marked road for approximately 10 minutes while the camera relearns lane marking parameters. On Honda vehicles, the system recalibrates automatically after a windscreen replacement during a specific first drive cycle that must be performed at above 45 miles per hour for a minimum of 15 continuous minutes. Check your system's calibration status after any windscreen, suspension, or tire work. The 15-minute drive costs nothing. The accident the system prevents is priceless. And now, the feature that every automotive engineer I have interviewed in the last 5 years names when I ask them what single car feature is most underused. You really don't want to miss this. Number 1. The engine oil dilution detection and purge function. Short trip driving is the most damaging thing most people do to their engine, and almost nobody knows why. When a petrol engine runs for less than 10 minutes, it never fully reaches operating temperature. Specifically, the engine oil never reaches the 100 degrees Celsius threshold, at which water vapor and unburned fuel that enter the oil during combustion are evaporated out of the crankcase. Instead, they remain in the oil. Water from combustion condensation, unburned fuel from rich cold start mixtures both dilute the oil, reduce its viscosity, and compromise its ability to protect bearing surfaces. According to research published in the journal Tribology International, engines subjected to predominantly short-trip driving show oil dilution levels of between 4 and 8% by volume within 3,000 miles of an oil change. At 4% dilution, oil viscosity drops below the minimum specification for the rated grade. At 8%, bearing wear rates increase by a factor of 3 compared to undiluted oil. The feature built into every modern vehicle to address this is the extended idle purge function, sometimes listed in the owner's manual as the oil temperature normalization procedure. On most vehicles, it is simply what happens if you allow the engine to idle for 10 to 15 minutes after a series of short trips before switching off for the final time that day. At idle with no drivetrain load, the engine reaches and maintains operating temperature. The oil temperature climbs to the evaporation threshold. Water vapor and fuel dilutants are driven out of the oil through the positive crankcase ventilation system. The oil that lubricates your engine on the next cold start is the oil it was when it went in, not a diluted shadow of it. What almost no driver knows is that the oil life algorithm on these systems factors in short trip frequency as a primary degradation variable. A vehicle that drives exclusively short trips will show 50% oil life remaining at 3,000 miles. A vehicle that drives primarily motorway miles will show 50% oil life remaining at 7,000 miles. The system is telling you the actual condition of the oil, not a fixed mileage number. Elena, a subscriber in Boston who drives a 2018 Honda Civic, told me she had been changing her oil every 3,000 miles because her father had always told her that was the right interval. Her oil condition monitor was consistently showing 65 to 70% oil life remaining at every 3,000 mile change. She was discarding oil that still had 40% of its service life ahead of it, spending an extra 2 oil changes per year, approximately $140 annually, for no benefit to the engine. When she began monitoring the oil life display and changed at 15% remaining as Honda recommends, her change intervals averaged 5,200 miles on her short-trip urban commute, and the engine showed 0 increase in wear metal content on oil analysis. On the other side of that equation is Raymond, a reader in Houston who drives a 2016 Ford F-150, primarily on 10-minute school run trips twice a day. His oil condition monitor showed 25% life remaining at only 2,000 miles, triggering an early change that his fixed interval habit would have missed by 1,000 miles. An oil analysis at change time confirmed 4.6% fuel dilution in the oil, precisely the level at which bearing protection is compromised. Raymond changed the oil. He also started allowing the truck to idle for 12 minutes every third day during the school run cycle, letting the purge function drive dilutants out before they accumulated. His next 2,000-mile oil analysis showed dilution at 1.8%. The idle purge function had cut his oil dilution by more than half. This is the feature that automotive engineers consider the most important unrealized asset in the average driver's vehicle. Not because it is complicated, because it is simple, it is free, it is already built in. And the data on what happens when you use it versus when you ignore it is not ambiguous. Monitor your oil condition display. Trust the percentage, not the calendar. And if you drive predominantly short trips, give the engine 15 minutes of idle time regularly. The oil that keeps your engine alive for 200,000 miles or beyond is the oil that never gets diluted past the point of protection. If this video saved you money or changed how you think about your car, hit the like button and subscribe. There is a video on your screen that reveals more hidden features that your car is hiding from you. Watch it now. Your car is smarter than anyone told you. It is time to catch up.